Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to Let's Talk, the series where we have already traveled the multiverse. This is your friendly neighborhood Birdman, and today we're talking Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. After the events of No Way Home, where no one remembers Peter Parker, an alternate version of Doctor Strange and a young girl with the ability to traverse the multiverse, America Chavez, is on the run from a powerful entity that has been chasing America through the multiverse. Through a quick series of events, America ends up in the continuity we are all most familiar with, and our Doctor Strange reaches out to the Scarlet Witch to find out what is chasing America and stop them before they destroy the multiverse. Now, there are things I love about this movie, and there are some things I do not love about this movie. As always, let's start off with the good. Every actor in this movie is brilliant. It's the MCU after all, so I sort of expect everyone to be good, but this is one of those movies where you can't really find fault in any of the actors as they embody their roles very well. The two standouts, however, are Benedict and Elizabeth Olsen, and frankly, I can't tell who is doing a better job. Benedict has to play multiple characters, this is the multiverse after all, and each one of those characters feels unique and lived in, even though they are simply alternate versions of Doctor Strange. The hair and makeup are really good on him, and he disappears into these different versions of the character. If Benedict plays multiple characters very well, Elizabeth Olsen plays one character equally as well. The Scarlet Witch is shown in all her glory in this film, and the emotional depth Olsen has to go to bring this character to life is worthy of a nomination of some sort in my opinion. I thought she was brilliant, and this is easily my favorite appearance of hers in the MCU, even over WandaVision. She's extremely charismatic, and her costume is as comic accurate as it can be given the PG-13 rating. Speaking of PG-13 rating, this movie is one of those films that stretches the meaning of PG-13. There's a bit of gore in the first 15 minutes that's going to have your theater groaning, but in a good way. Actually, quite a lot of the runtime comes across as a horror film, and I would suggest you keep your squeamish children home. This is not your typical MCU film where there is an overall joyful and hopeful tone throughout. Characters get brutally killed and maimed in this flick, and there are more than a few actually scary moments in this thing. This is one of the things I adored about this movie, as the villain has zero qualms about brutalizing certain characters, and these scenes make for a really decent horror flick. As for things I'm on the fence about, there are some amazing cameos in this movie, more than a few that will make you gasp. But just as quickly as the movie gives, I feel this element will piss more than a few people off, and I think that is unfortunate on the audience's end. The audience will react poorly to this, but it's because they won't understand what is happening and why. If I can be the voice of reason here, when you get to these scenes, understand that Marvel knows what they're doing and remember the title of this movie and its premise. In my Everything Wrong with video on No Way Home, I made mention of the fact that people seem to want answers for certain things without understanding that each movie in the MCU is akin to a chapter in a book. That is to say, no matter what you see in this movie, the MCU has not ended, therefore, relax. You will know exactly what I'm talking about when it happens, and just keep my words in mind. On to the negatives, I would have preferred if the film remained a horror movie all throughout. After about the middle of the movie, it became more of an MCU movie where there are big fight sequences and the like. In particular, there is a fight that involves the usage of music, which, while extremely creative, I found pretty goofy upon my second viewing. I don't think that fight will age particularly well, as it doesn't really make much sense outside of someone on the storyboard team had a cool idea and we just went with it. Another complaint I keep having with the MCU is their shoddy CGI and special effects. I can remember 3 distinct moments in the film where the CGI and special effects are horrible. The first involves Wong in the first set piece of the film. When he first appears, he is CGI and his slide into the fight looks fake as hell, almost as if the effect wasn't done and they released it anyway. The second involves Wanda when she's in a building in Camartage and she goes from standing to flying and you can tell she's on wires. The third is the aforementioned fight involving music where a certain character gets hit with magic and it looks like he was just standing there waiting for his cue. These scenes were bad enough that I remembered them, with Wong's being particularly egregious and reminded me of the scene of Peter Parker running on rooftops in Spider-Man 1. I mean, Sam Raimi directed both of these movies after all. In the end, I thought this was a great addition to the MCU, and I'm so happy to to see more of Doctor Strange. He's one of the few MCU characters that we never see do much, always relegated to the background and holding the waterfall. Benedict absolutely shines in his multiple roles, dealing with the consequences of his actions, and is badass as the Not-So-Sorcerer Supreme. Elizabeth Olsen carries this film as she plays a complex and layered character who brings all the emotions from unbridled rage to extreme sadness. When the film is a horror movie, it is at its best, delivering some perfectly executed scares and absolutely brutal deaths. When the movie is an MCU movie, I think it's at its weakest, while, although still good by MCU standards, brings the movie down from its amazing horror moments. The middle of this movie is going to gain fans and then immediately piss them off, and while I understand why Marvel is doing this, I can't help but be on the audience's side in their disappointment with what happens. The CGI, while overall stellar, has some moments that makes me question how competent the special effects artists are. I said this on my Twitter, that if No Way Home was the peak of the MCU, Multiverse of Madness is definitely headed towards Valley territory, although thankfully, it's not quite there yet. B-.